ALP! 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 Ladies and gentlemen, it feels like an eternity. It has felt like a decade. It really hasn't been that long, but it actually has been a hot skip in a minute. And it is certainly for the first time this year here in 2022. We are delighted to have him on here. Of course, our very dear friend. He is the heart and soul of KOW. He has pretty much done everything you can think of when it comes to KOW. And of course, he has been a booker, a promoter, a general manager, an on-screen talent. You name it, he's done it. He's even done some ring work. He's even introduced me here on past podcasts, but thankfully now we're live here on video, and it's been long overdue, and I can't wait to get ready to be, without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, our very dear friend, the heart and soul of KOW, booker, promoter, and general manager, ALP. My friend, long time no speak. How the hell are you?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, it has been a little while. I'm doing well, thanks. I've been enjoying the long bank holiday weekend. Have to go back to work tomorrow, which is a shame, but never mind. But yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm looking forward to the next show and being back busy promoting shows again after obviously so long not doing anything. But yeah, I'm doing well.
Absolutely happy that that development has definitely happened here. I know we spoke last year. It's like, well, we think we might come back. We don't know. We couldn't. And then finally, late last year, we were able to return. And obviously, it has been quite a return for Cloud9 in the lounge and everybody at Barrow. And so happy that is the case. And we have so much to get into, my friend. And I forgot it's still, I guess, kind of a holiday weekend here. So I guess obviously, but we're on Sportswire Radio. It's never a holiday for us because we work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And my friend, there's a lot to get into. And in fact, we actually, again, I think it's kind of timed. Every time I'm on the air speaking KOW, there's always an announcement, whether it's you've come on in the past, the natural born fighter RP Davis, who we got into with Lucy Simons, of course, who's been a huge part of KOW, and she's blown up since the last year. But obviously, we have a match that was recently announced and just a little short while ago. And for those who are watching and listening to this now on sportnarium.com/players, we're about to be joined here in progress by everybody on sportnarium.com/player. We're going to have an interesting match here, and it's, I guess, in a way, kind of fitting to the name Redemption here. We're going to have Shawnee against Brian Adelson, who's somebody here that we spoke about quite a bit in depth on last week's show. And this is an intriguing match. I almost don't know if you call it a #1 contenders match, if it's an eliminator match, as they would say in boxing, but set the tables for all of us here on Sportswire Radio and everybody that's joined in here on sportnarium.com/player and all of our platforms now on what we can expect in this match here, May the 14th at Cloud9 The Lounge here, ALP. Shawnee versus Brian Adelson.
Yeah, obviously he's just been asked this evening. Commissioner Steele's obviously been putting the matches together now that he's taken on the general manager role. It's a very interesting match. Obviously, it's not been specifically billed as being like a #1 contenders match or anything like that, but obviously for both men, it's an important match. Neither of them got a win on our first show of the year for different reasons. But obviously for both of them, they're looking to get that first win. And obviously with everyone in KOW, it's all about trying to get into title contention. So obviously a win here would potentially move them up the potential rankings when Commissioner Steele's considering future contenders. So it's going to be important for that reason. Both sort of quite different but very similar in a way. Shawnee's obviously been a part of KOW since our very first show back in 2012. He's one of the few people who's been on, pretty much every show we've ever run. He's been very successful. He has a really good win-loss record, but just for whatever reason, he's never quite managed to capture a title in KOW. He's fought for the heavyweight championship before. Obviously, him and Ryan Hunter teamed up as a tag team, and they haven't quite had the success that I'm sure they would have hoped for up till now. So he's in an unusual position where, like, say, we're coming up to our 10th anniversary show at the end of the year. This is our 10th year of running wrestling shows in Barrow, and he's never been champion. So he's always got his mind on that, I think. He's had obviously a bit of a change in character or personality fairly recently before lockdown. He was always a fun-loving guy, but he's sort of more
Yeah,
embraced.
we spoke about him in the
Side of him.
past, no question. Yeah, that matches Shawnee. He's definitely a little bit of a different cat, they may say.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously now you see him come out in his tie-dye shirts and with his, glow sticks, throwing them out to the crowd to "I'm Too Sexy" by Right Said Fred, and obviously the
I was gonna say he's almost a cross between Lucas Neon and Van Hammer in WCW. Van Hammer used to wear all those tie-dye shirts. You always see him on Thunder or Saturday Night. He'd always wear like these tie-dye shirts with almost like a Jimi Hendrix vintage look. And I think that maybe Shawnee's going at least for the Van Hammer tie-dye look.
yeah, or at least like the Dudleys back in the day, they used to do the tie-dye as well, didn't
Yep,
they?
yep.
But yeah, definitely giving off that vibe. But yeah, he's so like say he's almost embraced his fun-loving side more within the last couple of years. But I know from knowing him personally that the fact he has never been a champion in KOW in what is basically now and has been for a long time is his home promotion is something that does eat at him and does bother him. So for him, obviously, getting this win will potentially move him closer to a showcase or heavyweight championship match. For Brian, he's obviously brand new. The Ronin only just debuted at TakeOver, didn't get a win in his debut match. And for him, Shawnee basically is, a roster member for life or as long as he wants to carry on competing. Whereas for Brian, every match is important. There's people who want spots. We saw a lot of people debut at the last event. So there are people who are going to be gunning for his position, people who have already been on shows, people who haven't been on shows for KOW. So for him, it's important that, if he does pull out a win, that makes him more likely that he's going to get more opportunities and, eventually cement himself potentially a permanent roster spot. So for both of these guys, it's very important for where they're going to go moving forwards. For Shawnee, for potentially title contention, for Brian potentially to become a full-time roster member, and again potentially title contention, because obviously if you capture a title in KOW, you're going to be part of the roster moving forwards.
I want to ask you this question because you said some things that are very intriguing about this match, and it's certainly one that I think in a lot of ways actually might be more than meets the eye because, in a sense, Brian has something to prove here. He just came to KOW. He certainly wants to be somebody that can be somebody in the discussion for whatever happens at Redemption between 2-Bit and the War Machine, Craig Collins. And obviously, we have Shawnee, who we spoke about here in the past, and he's somebody that, again, has been one of those KOW originals pretty much. So in some ways here, Shawnee wants to prove he can still go. And then you've got Brian, who's going to almost, in a sense, want to use a victory here as a springboard to get himself in a discussion. And almost, in a sense, it could be, I hate to use this expression because Shawnee's probably not going to agree with this, a passing of the torch match in a sense. I mean, give me your thoughts on some of that here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if anyone comes in and beats somebody like Shawnee, somebody who's a fan favorite and has been around for a long time, that is obviously going to get them a lot of momentum. If he was wrestling somebody who was newer, maybe, not to discredit like an RPD or a Dynamite Lee Dawson or one of the newer additions to the shows. But yeah, a win over them is great, but a win over a Shawnee or a 2-Bit or a Lucas Neon or a Nightmare is obviously going to hold more weight in KOW because of their history. So yeah, definitely Shawnee's not going to want to feel like he's being surpassed by somebody new who's just come into the company. And obviously Brian's going to be fully aware that if he gets a win, and not only that, if he knocks off one of the sort of cornerstones of KOW to some extent, then yeah, it's going to help him even more in terms of, future appearances and potentially a full-time roster spot.
Absolutely. Again, this is going to be a match, certainly May 14th, Redemption. We're not too far away from that. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I think we're about another almost 4 weeks. So time certainly flies, and certainly we have a lot to get into here when it comes to KOW. And of course, if you like what you hear from KOW, please give KOW a follow on Instagram, K_O_wrestling, Twitter, KO_wrestling, also Knockout W on Facebook as well. A lot of great ways to get in touch with KOW. Of course, tickets are still available, of course, for Cloud9 in the Lounge, but KOW's always been one of my favorite companies around. Something tells me that tickets aren't going to be available for much longer, so you definitely want to do so. Get out there. Cloud9 in the Lounge has always been one of my favorite places when it comes to speak about, when it comes to a venue in wrestling, and of course, ALP does a phenomenal job with that here, and certainly Speaking of Bryan's opponent and his debut at TakeOver on March the 14th, we spoke about it to kick off last week's show, and I'm sure you heard quite a bit of that discussion. Of course, that was the talk of all social media. Of course, he's always the talk of social media anytime you speak about him, and that is the natural-born fighter, R.P. Davis. I mean, everywhere I go, the natural-born fighter, R.P. Davis, is everywhere. He's going to be For the Love of Wrestling next weekend. He's been all over the place. You hear about him. He's everywhere, literally. But he's going to be in KOW in a match that, to me, is – I mean, this could be a main event. I mean, forget about 2-Bit and War Machine Craig Collins. This could be in almost any company out there in the UK and the Northwest scene, most certainly would be a main event. And this is a match between him. And again, when I think of KOW's Mount Rushmore, regardless of what anybody thinks of him, the Cumbrian Outlaw Rick Marcus, I believe, is on that Mount Rushmore. And we're going to see the team of Born Ready actually wrestling against each other in KOW. I mean, this has to be a match. I mean, I would put a lot of pounds toward this match. We know both men very well. We've had them on countless times. They're dear friends of ours. Obviously, you know Rick Marcus better than anybody. You've gotten to know the natural born fighter, R.P. Davis, and especially, I guess, with those birthday wishes, if you want to throw that in there as well. But obviously, ALP, I mean, you got to set the tables for us. I'm almost going to say this is almost like the co-main event here between the natural-born fighter, R.P. Davis, and the Cumbrian Outlaw, Rick Marcus, next month at Redemption. I mean, talk about this match.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, Commissioner Steele's doing a really good job. You know, we've got 5 matches announced so far, and I'm sure we'll touch on all of them. But the shows since we've been back have been absolutely stacked, and there's been, you know, numerous matches you could look at and say that's worthy of being the main event. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that Rick Marcus and RPD have main evented a show before, I believe, for Superstar Pro Wrestling in Liverpool. So
no, we weren't going to mention that because we wanted to be KOW exclusive.
That's fine. It's fine. Obviously, they've got history elsewhere, and obviously, like say, they have collided before outside of KOW. But I think the reason that it's more special in KOW is the fact that it is Rick Marcus's home promotion, and obviously, you know, at Takeover we had a huge crowd. We had 200 people. The place was packed. They were super loud, and you know, it was a great experience for RPD's first show, seeing the Barrow crowd, you know, sort of at their fullest strength and at their loudest. As you alluded to, it was his birthday, and as I was ring announcing, I led the crowd in a rendition of Happy Birthday to You, which was a surprise to the natural born fighter, and I think he appreciated that. But yeah, you know, in his debut out, and it went really well. The crowd really did get behind him. But I think, no disrespect to the match between Aidenson and RPD, but I think the most interesting development was after the match when Rick Marcus came out to confront him and obviously air his grievances about the fact that he'd been left off the show. I know you spoke about it with Lucy and you covered it in depth, and you both had some interesting points to make. One thing that I thought about is that I think maybe part of the reason, because obviously there is that mutual respect there. This isn't like a Sheriff Steele, Rick Marcus situation where, you know, they want to beat
Ryan Grayson and Sheriff Steele.
Exactly. It's not one of those where they want to beat each other black and blue and force each other out of the company, and there's a real personal hatred there. I think each man has a point to prove, and there is a mutual respect. But I think part of it maybe is that Rick, as far as he's concerned, is the greatest wrestling KOW history. You know, he's been a heavyweight champion, showcase champion, road to gold winner.
Listen, he's right there. Him and Sheriff Steele. I throw Nightmare out. There's a few names. I mean, he's right there. He's definitely right there.
100% his accomplishments speak for themselves, but I think maybe part of the reason he was, and again, obviously he didn't say this, and this is me reading between the lines, but I think maybe part of the reason he was so upset was not only was he left off the card, you know, one of his best friends was on the card when he wasn't, but he got a really good reaction. The crowd were really behind him, and I think some part of Rick has always been resentful of people that the fans get behind. Look at his rivalry with Sheriff Steele. I think a big part of that was not only, you know, the championship implications, but was the fact that to Rick, he was clearly superior. He was in better shape. He was younger. He'd achieved more than the Sheriff. And the fans still hate him and love the Sheriff. And I think maybe that's a small part of it, is that RPD shows up on one show and he gets more applause and pundits from the fans than he's ever gotten in his multiple years with KOW. So I think that's part of the reason why Rick was so upset. Obviously, on top of the fact that he feels that Sheriff Steele, or should I say Commissioner Steele, is sort of singling him
Every
out.
time you say that, it reminds me of when Roddy Piper was commissioner for the WWF. Commissioner Piper.
I think was Foley a commissioner? I think Mick Foley
Yeah,
was
probably was
commissioner as well.
Shawn Michaels was famously a commissioner for like 100 years. I mean, you'd have like every 4 months you'd have the Shawn Michaels appearance when he was kind of in between that phase where he was like a born again and not a born again, and he was Commissioner Shawn Michaels. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. But so I think that's part of it. There's a lot bubbling under the surface here. There's obviously the issues between Rick and Commissioner Steele, where Rick obviously feels that Steele deliberately left him off the show, and Steele didn't deny that or back down from that. He basically admitted it, but he obviously said that he think Rick had lost that fire, that he hasn't done anything of note in some time. He hasn't had any championship success in some time. The RPD's obviously come in now, and the fans are really behind him, and RPD is going to be a part of KOW moving forwards. And so Rick's been given a chance to prove that, look, show the fans, show Commissioner Steele, show yourself that you are still what you claim to be, the best wrestler in KOW history. And if you want to do that, you're going to have to beat RPD. You're going to have to beat a guy who, just like you, and I think this is why they get on so much, is they're both so driven for success. They both want to be winners. They both want to be champions. They both want to be on top anywhere that they work. And I think that's going to make this match really interesting. Rick is known for not being a fair fighter and for breaking the rules, but when he's in there, one of his best friends, is he going to do that? Is it going to be more of a fair contest? Is Rick going to get to a point where he's so desperate to win and prove that he's still got it, that he will cheat and backstab his friend in order to win? There's a lot of things going on there, and I think it is going to be a really interesting match, and like I say, could be the main event potentially.
Let me ask you this question, and I hate to put words in your mouth, or frankly anybody's mouth, especially on this show and everything else here. I want to ask you this question in some ways. Do you see as a possibility, before I get to a comment here, do you see the possibility that the natural born fighter, RP Davis, is maybe that guy that replaces what Commissioner Steele was, and maybe the Cumbrian outlaw Rick Marcus sees that and says, you know what, maybe there's some sort of divide there on that? I mean, I hate to almost throw comparisons out there because RPD has only been here for one match, one event, but the fans love RPD everywhere he goes. He's almost like our version of Sting in a sense, where just the fans love him no matter what. I mean, RPD could probably like set a church on fire and he would still get cheered. I mean, he's got that kind of, support with the fans. I mean, not to say he's going to do that, obviously, but it's a metaphor. But let me get your thoughts on some of those things.
So, I mean, the way I see it playing out is I think whoever wins, there's one of two ways it's going to go. Either they're going to both wrestle and the better man will win, and they'll both be able to move on with that, and their friendship won't be negatively impacted, and they'll both be able to continue, and their bond as friends will move beyond, professional wrestling and carry on. The other possibility is that this match does make things personal. Rick sees his position as being threatened in his home company. RPD sees some action that Rick takes in the match as being unacceptable and crossing the line, and things escalate. So obviously, if you look at the most personal rivalries in KOW, like you alluded to, Commissioner Steele and Rick Marcus is right up there in terms of some of the most personal rivalries going. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of two. I think they could have the match, and I think it could, end relatively fairly with a winner and a loser, and they're both able to carry on and let that mutual respect carry through. Or we could see this escalate and become a more long-term issue. It really could go either way. And I think, to be honest, it's Rick that's going to dictate what happens. I think it's going to be the Cumbrian outlaw. I can't see RPD, breaking the rules. I can't see RPD crossing a line. I think he'll do everything.
Yeah, he's not like that. He's not like that. No way.
I think he'll do everything he can to win, but within the rules, and just fighting through and showing his heart and his fighting spirit. Whereas Rick may be that guy who will do something behind the referee's back, who will grab the rope during a fall, who will try and low blow him, something like that. So I'm really interested to see how Rick's going to react, because when he is backed into a corner, we've seen before, he does tend to lash out, but usually that's not when one of his best friends is the person that he's lashing out against. So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see how the match itself plays out, and then almost how the afters plays out as well.
And I have a couple of comments I want to get into here. And the first comment is, I guess you could call him a friend of the show, and that is Chris. It is Chris Stone, who was formerly, I should say this formally for Mr. Stone's case, he was formerly one half of the LWF Tag Team Champions and the Wrecking Crew. And he has a question for you, ALP. And I don't know what he knows, but he's been on here a bunch of our streams at this point because, well, he just loves watching us. So he may not admit it, but he likes watching us here. But he asks you, is there any tag teams you're looking to book in KOW? Like awesome tag teams, like himself and Davey Getzky as tag team partner. I mean, do you want to answer that? I mean, this wasn't planned. I just want to let you know this was not planned here by us to ask you that. Would you like to comment, Mr. ALP?
You think he's insinuating that I should book him? Is that what you think he's insinuating?
Well, he's asking a friend here if you were looking for tag teams to book for KOW, like the Wrecking Crew, the former LWF and the first ever LWF Tag Team Champions.
I mean, I will say that we are always looking, for new talent. Obviously, Takeover was a perfect demonstration. We had a fair few new people on the show who we've been keeping an eye on. We've always got our eye on people. I mean, this might upset Chris a little bit, but to be honest, we had spoken with Synergy previously, and I know that might be a bit of a sore spot. But yeah, we have
the current tag team champions in the LWF. Wow, what a way to punch him in the gut there, ALP.
I know, but yeah, there's definitely lots of tag teams in the Northwest that are really good. Reese and Rogan as well are people that we've had an eye on.
Reese and Rogan, we know them well.
We've worked with the Merseyside Mercenary Squad before. Yep. Obviously, the likes of they're out at the moment, but Luke Jacobs and Ethan Allen. There's lots of really good tag teams. Obviously, with the Freak Show being the current tag team champions, they're always going to be looking for the best competition possible. So at the moment, I can't say we're definitely looking at anyone. We're definitely not looking at anyone. But in general, we're always trying to keep our ears to the ground and our eyes open and seeing who is out there, who's doing a good job, who we think would be a good fit for KOW in the future, so that when potentially opportunities do open up, that we're ready to bring someone in when necessary. But obviously, the Freak Show at the moment are a little busy with the underclass, so not for the immediate future, but you never know.
Well, I was going to say, if you were looking to combat the underclass, and not to say that I'm trying to insinuate anything, but if I do recall correctly, in a sense, when Vince McMahon brought in the NWO, it was
I knew you were going to bring this up.
The lethal dose of poison to inject into the WWF to combat everything that was going on and all the chaos. In a sense, I mean, if Commissioner Steele was having a hard time with the underclass, certainly after Redemption, I mean, it would be fair to say or insinuate that Commissioner Steele could inject a lethal dose of the Wrecking Crew of Chris Stone and Davey Getzky, and just maybe that could combat the underclass if things go awry come May the 14th. I mean, do you have a response toward that, or do you think Commissioner Steele would have that in mind, maybe?
I mean, in terms of Commissioner Steele, obviously I can't speak for him, but sure. In terms of referring to my time as general manager, I don't know if bringing in another group that's known for causing chaos and destruction is the best idea. It could work. You never know. It could work. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if it gets to the point where the underclass hold all the gold, then it might be we get to the point where there is some desperation there, and we need anything to, stop the underclass's reign of terror. So yeah, I mean, it's a possibility, but how would that mesh? We've seen too, but he's very resourceful. What if suddenly the Lancashire Wrecking Crew end up joining the underclass? For example, if we're we're talking completely hypothetically. So I could see it backfiring if that was the route that Commissioner Steele was to take, either because it just brings even more chaos to shows, or they end up forming some sort of super group. There's numerous ways it could go. I don't see any of them being particularly good, if I'm being honest, based on my knowledge of the Wrecking Crew and the underclass.
All right, that's fair. Listen, that is certainly fair, and obviously we'll see what happens. I mean, never say never, obviously, with the underclass, and I'm sure certainly see them in the LWF continue to resume their success and their dominance, and obviously it wasn't the most successful day here for the Wrecking Crew, but we'll get to that later in the week when we speak about the LWF. But I do want to speak about the underclass now that she kind of brought it up, and I had a question for Lucy here, and this maybe will determine the fate of the Wrecking Crew in some crazy way or another. But we were speaking about this with Lucy, and I wanted to get your thoughts here on this and tell me what you think. I mean, in some ways, it's almost like rolling the dice right now at the underclass, and here's why. Obviously, we know that Keenan took the showcase trophy. from Lucas Neon. We know that 2-Bit has the world title, and we know that Andre Decker and the newest addition to the underclass, Logan, are going to try and get their hands on the tag team championships coming up here May the 14th. But in some ways or another, for the underclass, I think the pressure is really on them because, sure, right now they're dominating, but there's a legitimate possibility here on May the 14th at Redemption ALP that 2-Bit could definitely lose to the former champion, the War Machine, Craig Collins, in a 2 out of 3 falls match. The Freak Show could still walk away and retain these tag team championships because we don't know the relationship or how the tag team partnership between the unforgettable Andre Decker and Logan. And then we've got Keenan, who's only got a 1 1/3 chance to retain his showcase trophy because he's going to be also up against the former champion in Lucas Neon. And then we're also going to see Dynamite Lee Dawson. And I mean, talk to me about all those scenarios there because something tells me here, ALP, that we could be looking at it the other way around. And the underclass are the ones right now who have their backs up against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the saying that, getting the title is the easy part, but it's defending it and keeping hold of it that's the hard part. And that's obviously the situation that 2-Bit and Keenan find themselves in at the moment. Obviously, Logan and Decker are going to have a lot of pressure on them. It's going to be Logan's first match in KOW, and it's for the tag team titles in a tables match. So that's obviously a lot to take on in your first contest. I think definitely this show is going to be interesting because the night could end with underclass having all the titles, none of the titles, the same number of titles, one less. There's so many different ways it could play out. Personally, I don't see the underclass leaving without a title. And the reason for that is because 2-Bit is the Rat King. And what does a rat do when it's backed into a corner, when it hasn't got food, when it hasn't got somewhere safe? It's going to lash out, it's going to get vicious, and it's going to do whatever it can. So as the night progresses, I mean, obviously I don't know what order things are going to happen, but let's say 2-Bit's in the main event, and the tag title match and the showcase title match are earlier on. Let's say if Keenan loses the showcase title, let's say if Decker and Logan don't win the tag titles, I think that just means we've already seen that 2-Bit has got a million tricks up his sleeve to get what he wants. Obviously, our first show back at Resurrection, Jeff had debuted, and that was what helped him win the title. The last show, Logan was revealed as being, his referee.
That was a clever rat-like move, a rat trap-like move, to say the least.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if it gets to the point in the night where 2-Bit is the last guy standing with a title as the leader of the group, I think he'll do whatever it takes to keep it. So as much as I want to see the underclass lose all the gold, I just don't see them walking away with walking out with at least one title for that reason. In the more pressure is on them, the more desperate 2-Bit will get, the more he's going to put his wicked mind to work, and God knows what we could see from him if it gets to that point. But I just don't see them leaving without at least one title, and potentially with all the titles, which is a terrifying thought for everybody else involved in KOW, to be completely honest.
I mean, listen, there is that possibility still. And I've brought this up with the unforgettable Andre Decker. I've brought this up with Lucy, that there is even a possibility going the other way around here, ALP, that the underclass could be bidding to be more potent and more dominant than the Bloodline, because right now we know that the Bloodline doesn't have all the gold. There's a possibility here in KOW that we could see the showcase, the tag, and the world belts all with the underclass. I mean, so we could go the other way around here and actually say that the underclass have the ability here to be the most dominant faction in all of wrestling right now. Because like I said, the Bloodline cannot get all the gold in the WWE, even if they're the undisputed tag champions, and certainly Roman has both belts on SmackDown and Raw, but they don't have the other titles in between that, and even the women's belts, if you want to throw that in there. But right now in KOW, the underclass have that opportunity to be even more potent, even more dominant than the Bloodline.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, the previous iteration of the underclass, they were also in a position where they were at this stage where they had 2 out of the 3 titles. 2-Bit was the showcase champion, and Jackson Decker were the tag team champions. And obviously, in that position, they held most of the gold in the company. That lasted for a few months, but eventually that came tumbling down. Neon would win the Showcase Trophy, and then the Freak Show would win the tag titles. And I think obviously that happened right before lockdown. Two-Bit then had 2 years to sit and stew and think about that, and the fact that he got on what he wanted and he was taken away from him. And obviously when he came back with a plan to grow the underclass, to get even more people behind him, to bring in Jennifer, which was something they didn't have before, more of a manager, somebody on the outside. Obviously, with her being a female and a non-wrestler as well, that's a different dynamic. Obviously, you're not going to see Nightmare, punching her in the face or anything like that, like you might do. Like you might do if Decker was to get in the ring and get involved or something like that. And obviously now with the addition of Logan, the group's growing. There's 5 members of the underclass now. Previously there was only 3, so they've gotten bigger. And obviously, I think 2-Bit, as we talked about before when I've been on, I know you talked about other people, 2-Bit's gotten better and better and better. He's recently had some matches outside of KOW that have been massive for him. He's had a couple of matches for Catch Pro Wrestling that I've been to. Yep. He had his match with Chris Ridgway, which was phenomenal. He recently had his 30-minute Ironman rematch with Chris Ridgway, which he also won. And those are huge. And again, going into a 2 out of 3 falls match, I think that match especially is invaluable. He'll have learned a lot. He's had to wrestle 30 minutes recently. Obviously, 2 out of 3 falls match won't necessarily go that long, but it's going to help him with his cardio. It's going to help him with his pacing. Tactics of that sort of match are very different to a singles match where you're just trying to get that one fall, that one decision. So I think, as you say, there is a real possibility they could capture all the gold. It would be unprecedented in KOW. Obviously, the showcase and the tag titles have been introduced relatively recently in terms of our history. I think the showcase trophy's been around 5, maybe 6 years, and the tag titles only 3 or 4, so they are both relatively.
I mean, it's not been that long. We don't have many tag team champions in the company's history.
No, exactly. It's literally at the moment is, the original champions, the underclass, and then the Freak Show, the third, tag team champions ever. But yeah, in terms of domination, it's going to be unmatched and unrivaled. The only thing I can think of is when very briefly Rick Marcus was showcase champion and heavyweight champion. That's the only comparison I can think of. Even then, he wasn't able to keep both those titles, and he had to vacate the showcase trophy, to allow him to carry on defending the heavyweight titles. So, yeah, absolutely, it's a possibility. The thing is as well, the power that it's going to give to you, if that is the case. If all 4 members are draped in gold, it's not just the fact they're champions, it's the fact that then gives 2-Bit a lot of leverage if he wants to say, do what we want, otherwise me and the rest of the underclass just aren't going to show up. We'll take your belts and throw them in a river or down the sewer, or whatever it might be. They've got that sort of power behind them. So yeah, it's very scary to think about, and it is very possible it could literally happen on May 14th at Redemption. So those guys who are competing, Craig Collins, Lucas Neon, obviously not a fan favorite, but even Big Guns Joe, I'd happily see Big Guns Joe beat Keenan and take that trophy.
And I stand corrected. I stand corrected, by the way. I think I said Dynamite Lee Doss when I meant to say Big Guns. That's why I paused. I'm like, wait a minute. Big Guns Joe is the other component of the showcase trophy match. So we definitely want to make sure we acknowledge Big Guns Joe because he's almost himself in his own right everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then obviously the Freak Show sort of being as the last, KOW sort of, obviously the underclass part of the roster, but the last KOW guys who still have their titles, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them as well, because depending on how the night goes, how the matches swing, it could come down to there being a match where, it's either the titles come back to KOW or stay with KOW, or all the titles are going to go to the underclass and leave KOW and the rest of the roster in a very bad position, because like say if they've got all the gold, they're going to be the strongest they've ever been, and the underclass have just been growing in strength ever since we came back. So this does seem like it might be the final part of 2-Bit's plan, and it's whether it's going to come off and give him what he wants and give him that power, or if it is going to blow up in his face.
We're going to certainly find out here. Again, these are reasons why you definitely want to go out and find out more information on KOW. Twitter, KO_wrestling. Also, Instagram, K_O__wrestling. Also, Knockout W on Facebook. Also, ALP Streams, give him a follow and like. Also subscribe to his Facebook group. Also subscribe to him and keep up to date with all the great things he's doing over there. So a lot of gaming stuff he still does from time to time. I know it's not as much as he used to, but he's still on there from time to time. Also follow him on Twitter at ALP Streams, because something tells me we're going to be hearing a lot more about KOW, especially on this show and other great shows as well. We'll get to that here in a few minutes. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, do give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content, including from the likes of, well, the Parts Unknown guys. The guys are a huge part of the Sportswire Radio family. You hear them here from time to time when they do their shows. They have been a big staple of KOW here over the past few months since the company has returned. I want to make sure we acknowledge those guys here. We're going to do that in a few minutes. Also, a special birthday wish here. So, obviously, excited for all the great things they do as a part of sportnarium.com/play, which where you can check us out. That is always our flagship. So, and meanwhile, we've added Facebook, we've added Twitter, we've added YouTube, LinkedIn, Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. We're also on a North Carolina radio station covering some of the stuff on, I think it's AM 980 with Desmond Johnson's Tobacco Road Sportsradio.com, where you can check us out. That's the flagship there for that. So I want to thank him for his support in streaming our show. So all those great outlets, but the flagship has always been sportnarium.com/player. And we are back finally. The great ALP has come back to Sportswire Radio and the Sports Report for the first time here since 2021, and he's back here in 2022 with a bang, and a lot to get into here as KOW is back here in style. And ALP, speaking of the Parts Unknown guys, obviously they have been only a staple of Sportswire Radio, but a staple of KOW. I mean, everywhere I look at a KOW show, I see the guys there at Cloud9 in the lounge, and I understand there's a birthday wish there we have to provide. So obviously want to share that, and also talk about what the Parts Unknown guys have meant to you. I know you've also been on some of their podcasts, and I've seen them all over at KOW shows. They literally do almost everything for you guys. In fact, I even hear they've done the raffle. I've heard they've helped set up the ring, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, they're pretty much almost like they've become like Lucy, what Lucy's become to KOW. So you got to talk about all that, and also a huge birthday wish.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously the guys Daly, Dom, and Josh have very quickly become a part of, like, say, the KOW family. That is how we always refer to it. You know, like, say, Lucy's part of that. You know, Mother Sue, I'm sure, has come up during the shows as well. Hi, Mother Sue, if you happen to be watching. But yeah, they've very quickly become part of the KOW family. Obviously, they're local lads. Daly I've known for a number of years. Dom and Josh have only met more recently through the podcast, but again, they're really good guys, and we're friends now as well, and we, you know, talk on a pretty regular basis. But yeah, it's Daly's birthday today, so just wanted to wish Daly a happy birthday from everyone at KOW. Hope you've had a great time. Obviously, it's a day off, so that's always good. Unfortunately, back to work tomorrow, but hopefully he's managed to enjoy it.
And I think that's, yeah, jump in.
Sorry, yeah. So happy birthday, bud. Hope you've had a really good day. Like I say, hopefully you have enjoyed it, and I'll probably be seeing you tomorrow anyway, so you can let me know what you got up to.
And I was actually going to go on cue. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, dear Daly. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Daly. Happy birthday to you. I don't have any candles, but happy birthday, my friend. Thank you for all you do for us at Sportswire Radio, and certainly for ALP over at KOW. Can't wait to hear the next show, and thank you for all you do for us. And of course, if you like what you hear from the Parts Unknown guys, I would highly, highly encourage that you most certainly, undoubtedly, give them a follow on Twitter. You can definitely do that by going to Pods Unknown on Twitter and just follow the guys. They do so much for us and for KOW, and they know everything about wrestling. They cover everything. They did a great Razor Ramon tribute show. They did a WrestleMania preview. They've done New Japan, AEW. These guys know it all, and happy birthday, my friend. We also got to give a shout out to, obviously, I guess we could say it's Mother Sue, because she's tuned in and she's watching us, and she says, hi, Tom and ALP. So we want to make sure we acknowledge her and thank her for all the great things that she does in promoting KOW. And I'm going to ask you, speaking of KOW and those, I mean, has Louis been back? Have you seen Louis back at the shows?
Yeah, Louis been back. He's been at both the shows. Unfortunately, I don't get that much time to speak to him on their show day because obviously I'm usually
Well, he's so
running
popular
around.
anyway. Everybody knows Louis. He's so
Yeah,
popular.
exactly.
Everybody.
Oh yeah, definitely. He definitely sees everyone. It's just usually I get to say a quick hello, and that's kind of it. Because before the show, I'm usually busy running around like a madman, making sure everything's sorted, and then afterwards, I'm busy making sure everyone is in one piece and everyone's sorted. So, but yeah, he's been at the shows, and that's obviously been great to see him back. And I know he's been traveling around all over the place actually since post lockdown. And I think they were at the LWF show that just happened. Obviously,
Yes, I
they're
think
going
I
through
saw
for
a photo of that.
OVW,
Yes,
the
I
King
think
Wrestling
I
as
did.
well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
so
all
he's
over. Listen,
obviously back in the wrestling. Yeah, exactly.
he's well. Listen, it wouldn't be wrestling without Louis. I mean, Louis. I mean, listen, he has been. At the end of the day, it all started for Louis at KOW. So at the end of the day, Louis and KOW, that always to me goes hand in hand here, and certainly want to make sure I acknowledge Louis. And that's what I love about KOW. In all seriousness, here is that everybody knows one another. It's almost like it really truly is family here. I mean, it truly is family friendly entertainment. It's special at KOW. I mean, there are other companies, and I had this conversation with a professional wrestler here stateside. We have a mutual friend in the States here, and he was telling me about him. And he goes, I want you to meet this guy. And we were speaking on the phone, and we were talking. He was asking me, why don't you do more AEW and WWE stuff? And I go, the reason I don't, because to me, in my mind, it's real in Barrow. It's real in Morecambe. It's real in Chorley. It's real in the UK. Wrestling is the way it should have been, and the way it ought to be is at places like KOW. That's why I love speaking about, of course, all the great things we do, especially at KOW. And that's why, again, listen, that's why we love this company and cannot stress enough all the great things that this company is doing here. And I want to go over actually back into the tag team championship match, because I spoke about this with Lucy, and obviously it's I guess a new underclass, and it's sort of a new underclass on the fly here against the Freak Show. And this is an intriguing match for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Nightmare holds a victory over the unforgettable Andre Decker, and that does count for something. Maybe you count that for momentum. I don't know. The unhinged Will Carter now will be 100% here. That could be a huge motive here. And obviously, he's going to want to prove something here, especially as you pointed out. Lucas Neon lost the Showcase trophy, and he was one of the guys we expected. Lucas Neon was going to have a big year. Now he's got to get back up and try to get him pick himself and pick him up in terms of getting back that championship that he long coveted. But in a lot of ways here, this is a match where in some ways maybe both teams have something to prove, because the Freak Show, obviously, we haven't seen much of them, frankly, in KOW. And then on the other hand, it's yet again a new version of the underclass, because now Keenan is on his own defending the Showcase trophy, and now the unforgettable Andre Decker has a new partner in Logan. I mean, in some ways, they might come at it from different ways, but again, I'm seeing a theme here, ALP, in a number of these matches. Both factions here, or both teams, are coming at it, I think, from the same vantage point. Maybe again, they do it in a different way, but give me your thoughts on the tag team championship match here between the underclasses, the unforgettable Andre Decker and Logan, against the Freak Show Nightmare and the unhinged Will Carter, because I kind of think in a lot of ways these teams might be similar and for different reasons.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is going to be the first time the Freak Show have been able to defend the Tag Team Championships on a main KOW show since lockdown. I mean, I think I'm right in saying they maybe had the chance to defend them on one of like our Academy shows, but in terms of a main, a main roster show, this is going to be the first time. Obviously, that's been because things have happened, and with running professional wrestling shows, it's always a case where you have a plan, something happens, that plan has to be scrapped. Obviously with Craig Collins having to vacate the heavyweight championship, that changed plans for Resurrection, and both Carter and Nightmare ended up being in the tournament to crown a new champion. And that wasn't obviously the original intention. I believe they were intended to defend the tag titles on that show, and again things got changed. Obviously, again, a takeover, they were meant to defend the tag titles, and then Carter got injured. So in terms of coming into this match, yeah, they haven't got much of an experience edge in terms of KOW over their opponents. Obviously, they have teamed up before a few different times, but I think they would agree with me if they were here that, they're probably a little frustrated that they haven't had more of an opportunity to team up and defend those titles. And especially with Will Carr getting injured and the manner that they were stopped from defending those titles, it has to be really frustrating. And I think,
gruesome. I mean, that was gruesome. I mean, what happened with him?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, we're just happy that Will, is doing okay, and he's going to be back at full strength, and he is able to carry on competing. And obviously, that's the main thing. But still, obviously, frustrating for the fans and for them as well, of course, that they weren't able to defend those titles, and they've had to wait. But so I think that's a little. It's a pro and a con for the Freak Show, really. They haven't had as much chance to, make sure that chemistry's right, and they're firing it on, firing it with full gas, really. But at the same time, they're both going to be even hungrier and more determined to put everything on the line when they are finally able to defend those tag titles, and they are going to be really hungry to do what they can to keep those titles. Obviously, it's very personal. Nightmare had his hair cut off by Jennifer at our first show back, and at the last show, Nightmare was put through a table by Decker while Carter was forced to look on, and both men got beaten down. So it's personal as well. It's not just a matter of pride and proving who the better wrestlers are. Obviously, it's in a very violent match. Decker and Logan. Decker is experienced as a tag team compare, but this is now going to be his third tag team partner. Obviously, he was partners with Jackson, was tag team champions with him. He teamed up with Keenan to, have a match on our first show and get this title opportunity. Obviously, again, things ended up changing. Keenan ended up going into the fatal 5-way match and ended up winning the trophy. So now he's busy and he's not going to be able to team up with Decker. So Logan steps in. Obviously, Logan and Decker are unproven. Decker is a powerhouse, absolutely. Logan as well, I think, fits more of that style, that brawling, that no-nonsense style. So I think they are going to mesh well together, even if it is their debut outing. But it is going to be very interesting, is this new sort of, not makeshift team, but this brand new team that have never had a chance to team up together. Are they going to be able to take it to the more experienced, but still maybe a little bit rusty Nightmare and Will Carter in this tag match? And obviously, with it being a tables match as well, it's a chaotic type of match. It can only take one moment for somebody to fall through a table and the match to be over. So it really could go either way, and we could see new champions crowned at Redemption on the 14th.
Very well could be that possibility. No question that the underclass are on another level, and especially the unforgettable Andre Decker, because I've had him on, I think at this point, almost as much as anybody, ALP. So I've certainly seen what Mr. Decker has done in the ring, and he's definitely communicated that us to hear many, many of times, and something tells me that we're going to be speaking with Mr. Decker in the near and distant future. So I am sure that there is a possibility here we could have him before the 14th, and certainly by the 14th, he could once again be holding gold in KOW for the tag team championships for the second time. And also, I want to acknowledge also where you can get more information on buying a ticket, of course, to Redemption. You can do that on TNT Records. You can do that for TNT Records Barrow. You can do that on Twitter at TNT Records Barrow, or go to the Salt House Post Office for just £7. I mean, think about this, right? People were spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds, right? Or thousands of pounds to go to WrestleMania. But I could go to Cloud9 in the Lounge, ALP, for just £7. I could see main eventers galore, world champions, guys like 2-Bit who hold wins over international stars like Chris Bridgeway, the natural born fighter RP Davis, who's in his own right an accomplished international star because he was a boxing champion multiple times over. The Cumbrian outlaw Rick Marcus. I mean, you've got so many wrestlers here that I would pay, like I said, hundreds and hundreds of pounds for, but I could only do so for just £7. I mean, what a deal here. I mean, so you can do that again, Salt House Post Office, or also go to TNT Records in Barrow. Make sure we support those people because, as I always say, the reason I'm successful over the past 3 years, and I'm heard in all these different great outlets and have so many people supporting me, is community. Just like KOW. KOW has the support of the community, and we want to always make sure that we support those who support us, like TNT Records and Salt House Post. So let's make sure we do that here. And of course, ALP has been a huge part of that here. And again, I want to go over now back into the Showcase Trophy match because obviously Keenan, I see him everywhere. I've been speaking about Keenan for quite a bit. But now we have a match here where Big Guns Joe wanted it. He got it. Then I have an announcement afterwards, and I want to get your thoughts on an announcement because we actually have something we're going to break here, actually. So I want to get your perspective on it. And obviously, we've got Lucas Neon, again, who's right in the mix here and certainly wants a chance to retain that Showcase Trophy and prove that Keenan's win was a fluke. I mean, what do you make of this match? Because we've had great showcase trophy matches here in the past. Obviously, of course, Will Carter, 2-Bit, Lucas Neon. But this one here, I don't want to say it could top some of those great showcase matches. We've obviously seen 2019. That was a part of the KOW match of the year. But I mean, this is going to be what I would call a banger. When you look at the card here, and I don't want to put words in your mouth because I know you're going to say every match is great here because you obviously have to sell it. But do we have a possibility here that the Showcase Trophy match could steal the show here on May the 14th?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't question that for a second. I mean, you've got three of the best competitors in KOW. Obviously, we've seen Neon versus Keenan before, obviously the last show, that was a really great match. We've seen Neon versus Joe before, obviously at TakeOver. So recent history for both of them. Again, that was an incredible match. Like say, often the Showcase Championship matches are some of the best matches in KOW history. Like say, obviously the match with 2-Bit was the match of the year for 2019. And I think when Lucy, I'm sure, gets around to doing the best matches of 2022, there'll be a lot of Showcase Championship matches that will show up on that list as well. Just the level of talent involved. Obviously, Lucas Neon is homegrown. He's one of our best homegrown competitors. The fans love him. He's got, that never say die attitude. He's got an enormous heart and just will never give up. You've got Big Guns Joe, who's one of the very best wrestlers in the UK. The reason he wasn't at the last show was because he was given an opportunity to wrestle in Germany for WXW, who's one of the biggest companies in the whole of Europe. So, he's wrestling for progress. He's wrestling all up and down the land, getting more opportunities, wrestling some of the best people going. He's an incredible compare, absolutely. And of course, Keenan, in terms of success in KOW, from considering the fact he only debuted in November last year, this is only his third show. He won the Showcase Trophy in his second match. His third match, his second show in KOW. So, that shows how phenomenally talented he is. His ability in the ring. Admittedly, he didn't win it fair and square, but still, there's no denying that he's an incredible wrestler. He's got great talents. He's very technically sound. And again, the success speaks for itself. There's probably only maybe one or two people who've had that level of success in KOW in terms of making their debut. I mean, I'm just trying to think now. Super Beast Dan Maloney was heavyweight champion relatively quickly. Obviously, Rick Marcus debuted with the Showcase Trophy, so that's a little different. But in terms of people who've been as successful as Jax as well. So again, a theme with the underclass. Jax was tag team champion fairly quickly. But yeah, in terms of a singles compare, I think he's probably the wrestler who's gone from debuting to winning a singles title the quickest out of anyone. And I think these three combining in the ring is going to create fireworks, and like you say, very well could steal the show. Again, yeah, it's a great card and there's a lot of great matches, but if I had to put my money down on which match could steal the show, I think it would probably be this triple threat match for the Showcase Championship.
No question again. And we know that the Showcase Championship has always had some great participants and some great matches that will rival any match out there in the world. And something tells me here, that's why I'm very, very excited about this here. And again, something tells me regardless of who wins, it's going to be a banger. And well, frankly, all three participants are going to be banged up. I think it's pretty safe to say, considering what those three guys can do in the ring, put them together, they're definitely going to feel that, to say the least, and they're going to put themselves through a lot. And obviously, again, though, we will certainly find out the outcome of that here on May the 14th. But we do have an announcement, and finally, we promised it here, and it kind of relates back to what we opened up with here, and that we are going to have on here tomorrow night, I think right around the time that you've come on here, it looks like Brian Adelson is finally going to come on. We were actually supposed to have him after you, but we had some scheduling conflicts on both ends, and that does happen because, well, that's radio, and that's life, and we're excited to have Brian on here and kind of get his side of the story on things. So, I mean, for those that are going to hear him for the first time here on Sportswire Radio, you've gotten to know him for a little bit. We've touched upon his match. I mean, set the tables on what we should expect from Brian Adelson tomorrow night here on Sportswire Radio Live.
I think he's not going to be very happy, to be honest.
He wasn't too happy when we spoke about RPD on last week's show, and that's why we were getting him here on this. And now we're going to, I'm sure, have him even more angry because of this match against Shawnee.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he wasn't happy with the outcome of his match against RPD. I mean, Lucy got an exclusive interview with him after the show that I believe has been posted on our social medias in case anyone wants to find it. But basically, as far as he's concerned, RPD won with an illegal strike punch, and that traditionally in professional wrestling, closed fists aren't legal. I mean, we're called KOW. You know, we've got a fist on our logo on the leg there. So I think in KOW we'll let it fly. But yeah, he's not very happy about the outcome of that match. As far as he's concerned, he's still undefeated in KOW. The KOW record book would disagree with him. But yeah, I think he's probably not going to be best pleased about that. But I think he's going to be very confident about his chances against Shawnee. I think he's probably going to say, to expect a win in that match. And, who knows, maybe he's going to stake a claim to a title. Maybe he might stake a claim to who he wants to face next. Who knows? But from meeting him, he's a very intense individual. He's very driven. He's very focused. He's very disciplined. But again, I don't think he will. I think maybe a little bit he's beating himself up about that loss and maybe doesn't want to accept that and he's blaming other people instead. But yeah, I imagine if you bring up RPD, I don't think he's going to be very happy about it. And again, I don't think he'll be super thrilled about his match with Shawnee, but I imagine he'll be confident that he is going to win and, move on and hopefully get a full-time roster spot with KOW.
I was looking at some of his footage and some of his social media getting ready for the announcement here, ALP, and I would not want to be in the ring and face some of those kicks because for whatever reason, when I see those stiff kicks and his karate background, I think his theme song, for whatever reason, his theme song should be AC/DC Stiff Upper Lip because it looks like you're going to get literally a stiff upper lip when you get one of those kicks from Brian. So, I mean, this guy's background is as accomplished as anybody. He's also wrestled internationally. So, I'm excited to have him on here. I hope I'm in one piece. I hope he doesn't kick me from the video stream and certainly gives me a stiff upper lip. But I'm looking forward to speaking about him, about maybe his experiences in KOW, what we can expect coming up here on May the 14th on Redemption, and obviously get his side of the story on his career. So I'm excited about that. You can also follow him on Instagram and Twitter at Brian AIDENSON. So make sure you definitely do that. So I want to make sure everybody follows him as well here for that. And we're speaking with ALP here, speaking all things related here to the world of KOW. Got another about half hour or so. So always excited to cover much more here with ALP and all the great things that KOW is doing. So I cannot stress it enough again. If you like what you hear from KOW, please give KOW a follow on Instagram at K_O_wrestling, Twitter, KO_wrestling, Facebook, Knockout W, so many other great ways, YouTube as well. And of course, TNT Records Barrow, that's BARRO on Twitter to get more tickets. The Salt Outpost, Cloud9, the Lounge for more information. This is really, again, a company I cannot stress enough that we love this company and all the great things that it is doing. So let's make sure we support those who support us, and that's certainly what KOW has done. As we're with the heart and soul of KOW. What I think it's the fifth time we've had you on, either fifth or sixth time at this point. I've lost count between you and Lucy. Between you, Lucy, and the unforgettable Andre Decker, I've lost count at this point. I know I'm going to hear from the unforgettable Andre Decker because he's going to say, well, I heard you talk about me. I heard you mention my match, and we'll certainly get him on. There's certainly a lot more here to expect from him, to say the least. But ALP,
maybe we should form a faction.
I'm available. I'm certainly available. Yeah. Do you think Andre Decker would?
You, me, Lucy Decker. We dominate KOW, I think.
Well, we have the size, right? We certainly have the size. Between your size and Andre Decker's strength right now, I certainly say that I might like my chances, actually. I certainly might. I might like my chances. Maybe if Andre Decker's bored in the underclass, he might want to come and join. Maybe we'll call ourselves the middle class. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a right particular faction here to call ourselves. But I'm sure Mr. Decker will take umbrage with that. And we'll find out here before the 14th his hard-hitting analysis on that and some here. But I want to go over to the main event. And obviously I've seen the war of words here, or the sort of, I guess, the trash talking between Jennifer and 2-Bit, I guess, to say the least. And 2-Bit is 2-0 against the War Machine, Craig Collins. And certainly that is what he is holding his hat on here. And it has certainly been a much more vicious 2-Bit. We had 2-Bit on, I guess, I want to say right before TakeOver. We had him on maybe a few weeks before TakeOver, and I mean, I thought he was the most vicious he's ever been. Something tells me he's even more vicious right now because I see him literally all over the world with Chris Ridgway and Scotty Rock. And I see him pretty much just literally like, I don't even know what if I want to bring Two Bit on because I'm terrified of Two Bit at this point. But obviously, here in KOW and Barrow, everyone's going to have to deal with him because he is going to be in the ring here in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And walk me through this match because, I know we touched upon it here a little bit in talking about the underclass, but I had made the point with Lucy that in some strange way or another, I know that Sheriff Steele, Commissioner Steele had made this match in a way to maybe handicap Two-Bit, but I think in some ways this actually favors Two-Bit. Why? Because the endurance factor. I think Two-Bit has that. I think a Two-Bit in terms of his in-ring work right now. He is at the top of his game. He might be at the top of the game of anybody right now in this scene here. He's the guy that holds the title. Whereas the War Machine, Craig Collins, again, he's got a lot to prove. Another theme here. We see another factor here where certain KOW matches are, I think guys have something to prove, whether it's Marcus and RPD, whether it's Freak Show and Underclass, whether it's Shawnee and Brian, whether it's obviously this match here, Lucas Neon in the showcase match with Keenan and Big Guns Joe. But I think right now, in a crazy way, that the current champion Two-Bit actually has the advantage here in this match for those reasons, because he can outlast the War Machine, Craig Collins. He's certainly been in the ring more, and he's got the clear momentum. Walk me through your thoughts on this and what we expect here in the 2 out of 3 falls match. Undoubtedly the main event for the KOW World Championship between the War Machine, Craig Collins, and the former champion, the man who never lost his championship, quote unquote, against the current champion, the Rat King, and the leader of the underclass and KOW, Two-Bit.
Yeah, I think because obviously I watched the interview with Lucy. Obviously, very interested. The two of you always make good points and bring up interesting points of discussion. So I've had some time to think about this and let it sit at the back of my mind and sort of mull it over a little bit. And yeah, I definitely think that I agree with the points that you made. I think knowing Collins well, Collins is a cardio machine now. This is me speaking of the pre-lockdown Collins. The post-lockdown Collins, I don't know as well. But the pre-lockdown Collins was an absolute beast. He'd been in Iron Man matches for KOW before. He was, that guy. I always said that, if you're in a scenario where somebody's going to be chasing you down a dark alley to try and get you, who's the last person in the world you'd want? My pick would have been Craig Collins because he was big, he's scary.
We talk about him quite a bit. Make no mistake, we've done that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think post-lockdown, obviously, he came back. I think from knowing him, I think he did have some concerns about coming back and being ready for that and being ready for that challenge. But he is the War Machine. He has a lot of pride. He's a very proud person. And I think he wanted to come back and do it in the right way. He wanted to come back and compete for what he'd ever lost. And I think it was that pride that was driving him. And in the same way, obviously after the match, when Sheriff Steele said Collins is going to get to pick the stipulation for the rematch because of Logan, being a corrupt referee and basically handing Two-Bit the win and it not being a fair outcome. And Collins even said, I could pick a match where I can wrap a chair around your head or throw you through a table. And I think maybe that would have been to Collins' advantage, to be honest, because he's had a lot more experience in those sorts of matches over Two-Bit. I think it plays more into his strengths in terms of his power game and his adaptability. But I think it's his pride. I think coming out of the match, I don't think he did incredibly well. He nearly won the title, but I don't think he was happy with his performance. Another thing is Craig's a perfectionist. I'm sure everyone in that venue would have said, "Oh, that was amazing." You wouldn't have known he'd been gone for so long. He did a great job. He didn't look out of place at all. But Craig is one of those people who will see the little things or will beat himself up the most about things and, be hard on himself. So I think when he picked a 2 out of 3 false stipulation, I don't think he picked that because he thinks it's the match he's most likely to win. I don't think it's because it's the match that he thinks gives him the biggest advantage. I think it's because he does want to prove he's the better man. He wants to prove that he still has that fire, that he is still the War Machine of old, and that given more time to prepare and more time to get in the shape he wants to be and get more ring time under his belt, that he is the better man, and over 3 falls he will win the title. And yeah, I agree. I think it does benefit Two Bit more in terms of physically. Like say, he's been wrestling more. Obviously, like we discussed before, he's just come off a grueling 30-minute Ironman match, so he's obviously had the opportunity to go a longer distance in a match and test out his gas tank. And obviously, as somebody who's there for that, again, he made, obviously not with battered and bruised and probably feeling incredibly sore for the next few days, but he made it through that and in fact won that match. So in terms of who the match benefits, I agree. I agree that I think it does benefit Two Bit, but mentally, I think it's more important to Collins because mentally, he knows he's set himself a challenge, and Collins isn't the kind of guy who wants a cakewalk. He isn't the sort of guy who wants to be handed anything. He wants to prove he's the best, and in his mind, doing a last man standing match or a hardcore match or a no ropes no rules match for the old school KW fans who know what that is, that sort of match, I think in his mind wouldn't prove he's the better man. It wouldn't prove he's still the War Machine. It wouldn't prove he still deserves to be KW champion. Whereas if he can win the 2 out of 3 falls match, I think he proves to everyone and to himself that he is still that War Machine of old, that he does still deserve to be seen as the best wrestler and the top wrestler in the company, and I think that's why he's chosen the match. I think it's a heart choice, not a head choice, and it's whether that's going to come back to bite him, because Two Bit does everything with his head. I'd argue he doesn't have a heart at all, so it's whose hands is it going to play into at the end of the day?
Two Bit and a heart, they certainly don't go hand in hand, literally, to say the least. I mean, of all the people I've had on over the past almost 3.5 years at ALP, I would definitely say that Two Bit is definitely probably the most cold-hearted individual I've had. And I've had on a number of politicians. So when Two Bit is more cold-hearted than politicians, that certainly tells you that Two Bit definitely doesn't go hand in hand with the heart. But let me ask you this question. As I'm listening to you speak and I'm hearing about the War Machine, Craig Collins, and obviously he was the former champion, obviously some unfortunate circumstances led to where we are today with Two Bit. But I'm going to ask you this question. I know KOW has a very interesting history, a long history, and an important history, but I'm almost going to ask you this question in a different way and tell me your thoughts on this, because I almost feel like in some ways that this match and maybe some of the other title matches, that this is kind of not a watershed moment, but it's an important event for KOW, because the landscape of KOW could really change in a number of ways. Because obviously, let's say the underclass loses all the gold. Well, KOW continues then where we have justice has been served, and KOW continues at the way that we've known and loved it for almost its existence, right? But if there is that possibility that the underclass has all the gold come May the 14th, this becomes a more dangerous KOW. This becomes a landscape where it's changed, where what do we do from here? Where do we go from here? Or maybe we have status quo and maybe we see the Freak Show retain the titles, Keenan hangs on, and Two Bit hangs on. And then we live another day, I guess. In some sense, it kind of, maybe it doesn't make everybody happy, but there's still some sort of order. But there's like 3 different possibilities here. I mean, is May the 14th kind of a watershed moment for the company, you think? I mean, give me your thoughts on all that.
I think it's a pivotal moment because obviously, I think one of the interesting things about KOW, it has been obviously when we started, we had the group of guys that we started with. Obviously, we talked about, Shawnee, Craig Collins, Nightmare. Those were the guys, Ryan Grayson, who we haven't seen in a while, but he was there in the early days as well. And that was sort of like the first generation of KOW almost. And for a long time, those were the sort of stars that we had. People would come in and they would leave, but those were our core guys. And then, of course, you had the likes of Sheriff Steele and Rick Marcus come up. And then we had sort of that era where Sheriff Steele and Rick Marcus were starting to break through and become the main guys, become the big stars, become the champions. And now we're getting to the point where it's Two Bit's class from the academy, where it's, Two Bit, Lucas Neon, and Will Carr. Obviously, Two Bit's the first person from that graduating class to be the heavyweight champion. So we're sort of moving into that era where maybe now they're starting to rise up. Obviously, they've all been showcase champions. Will Carr as a tag team champion. Two Bit's the heavyweight champion. So there's that as well, obviously, in addition to the points you've made, whereby it is part of the newer generation against possibly the standard bearer for the older generation. Two Bit's already beaten Nightmare in the first round of the title tournament, and again, he's one of the cornerstones of the company. He's beaten Collins once already, who's one of the other main cornerstones of the company. And so, in terms of that, if Two Bit wins again, it does sort of show that he's surpassed the people who he looked up to. You know, when KOW started, Two Bit and Lucas Neon and Will Carter were coming to shows as children and as fans.
I remember and they're still so young. I mean, they're in their early 20s. I mean, it's amazing, the three of them. They're still relatively. We've spoke about. They're so young in the game.
Yeah, exactly. So they've literally gone from kids in the crowd watching to trainees to, you know, the academy members to full-time roster members, and now they're getting to the point where they're all rising to the very top of the card. And obviously, if you talk about the Freak Show, you talk about Lucas Neon, you talk about Two Bit, they're three of our biggest attractions going. You know, obviously Two Bit's not well liked, but there's no denying that, you know, people come to see him. They come to boo him and hope he gets his head kicked in, but they still come to see him at the end of the day. Exactly. So there's that sort of generational battle going on, and as you say, there's the larger battle of almost the underclass versus KOW. I think, as you say, this is very important because obviously, if Keenan retains and Two Bit retains, then they're going to keep having new challenges, and odds are they're going to be, you know, we don't know if it's going to be is it going to be a Shawnee? Is it going to be an RPD? Is it going to be Nightmare or Will Carter? You know, who's it going to be? But there's going to be more people stepping to take those titles. Whereas if, you know, if I think, to be honest, the biggest thing is going to be this tag match, because if Decker and Logan lose, they're at the back of the queue. So they're not going to be able to have the chance to clean sweep and take all the titles again until they build up some more momentum and earn another title match. So, and the same if either Two Bit loses the title or Keenan loses the title, they're going to have to move to the back of the queue. Like say, we've said before, we talked about there are really instant rematches in KOW. Obviously, Collins is getting one, but that's because he was screwed out of the title in a massively unfair situation. But if somebody gets beaten, if Greg Collins beats Two Bit 2 falls to 1, and Two Bit isn't just going to get the next show to come back and get another title shot. He's going to be at the back of the queue. He's going to have to prove that he deserves another title shot. If Keenan gets beaten, same thing. He's going to be at the back of the queue, and you're going to have likes of Brian Aidenson and Shawnee and Dynamite Lee and all these other people who are going to be ahead of him in the queue potentially. And the same with the tag titles. So it is hugely important, because this is the show where potentially, you know, it's going to be all or nothing. Either this could be their only opportunity to do the clean sweep. And if it's Two Bit's grand plan is that he wants all of the gold, if one match goes wrong for them, they might not be able to get back in that position to try and get all the gold until the end of the year, or maybe even next year. And that may leave them in a position, you know, of doubt, of uncertainty, and they're not sure where they're going to go moving forwards.
And we have a comment here. We just popped up on the screen here. And speaking of him is the unforgettable Andre Decker, who I'm sure you might know, Mr. ALP. And his comment, as he's listening to us here speak about this, is he says, the underclass will leave with all the gold. Two Bit has already defeated the War Machine. Keenan has already beaten Lucas Neon. And you saw how easy it was for me to put the KOW poster boy Nightmare through a table. Your responses?
My response would be that, yeah, Two Bit has beaten Collins, but with a crooked referee. Keenan's beaten Lucas Neon, but with the assistance of Jennifer and without Big Guns Joe involved. And you put Nightmare through a table with an injured Will Carter and Keenan wielding a chain-wrapped baseball bat. So that would be my response. I respect your confidence. I do. I admire it. You know, you've got to be confident coming into when you're in professional wrestling. You've got to aim for the top. But I don't think it's going to be as easy as the unforgettable Andre Decker's making out to be. I think they've got a big hill to climb. Decker's got to team up with Logan and be, you know, arguably one of the best tag teams we've ever had. And Two Bit's got to defeat one of the greatest champions we've ever had, and Keenan has got to beat two different men to retain that trophy. So we don't know which way it's going to go. But Decker, you've been saying for months, years even, probably because of lockdown, you want your tag title shot. You're getting it. It's put up or short, mate. You either win or you go at the back of the queue. And I'm sure Commissioner Steele would back me up on that. So, you know, you haven't got long left. You've got another less than a month now to get ready for you and Logan to be ready for this match. You've certainly lit a fire under the Freak Show, and I know that they're going to want nothing more than to throw you through some tables and send you packing to the back of the queue.
Well, those are certainly some very, very big words here, and I will certainly say that something tells me, Mr. ALP, that we'll hear from the unforgettable Andre Decker before May the 14th, and something also tells me that he'll certainly have a response or two to all those things here. Certainly, again, the underclass are going to be in action here. They are certainly going to be a huge focal point of redemption, and also want to speak about this, and when it comes to KOW, as this is the year of the 10th year anniversary, certainly 10 years since we've obviously started KOW with everything else that's going on here. And I want to ask you this question. I know we'll speak about it later in the year, but what does it mean to you after everything we've gone through in the world and the pandemic and the lockdowns and the start and the pauses that we are marching on toward the 10th year anniversary show later this year? What does that mean to you, especially more than anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, to touch on a comment you made earlier as well, that obviously we went on to discussing other things, but obviously when you were talking about the tickets and the ticket prices and community and KOW being a family, that's a really important aspect. And I don't know if you saw recently, but there was a tweet that went out because Ryan Grayson was talking about the
I
value
did
for.
get to that. Was my next comment. I did get. I did see the.
Okay, that's fine. But yeah, so we're a non-profit company, obviously there are many promotions that are doing it to make a living, and that's great, and obviously we're happy for anyone who's able to run professional wrestling shows and make a living doing so and help pay wrestlers so they can make a living. But we're a non-profit, any money that we make on the shows, they go back into the shows. They go to paying the talent, booking the venue, hiring the van, a lot of promotion, all those things you need to do, the ring upkeep, those sorts of things. So we're a non-profit, and the money just stays within the company. It's not lining anyone's pockets. So KOW really is, it's a passion project. It's a lot of work. I have a full-time job. Virtually everyone else, who's involved with the day-to-day running of KOW, they have full-time jobs, they have families, they have homes, they have pets, they have their own responsibilities. So it is something that we all do out of a genuine love for professional wrestling and for Barrow. And, obviously people like Louise are perfect demonstrations of why we do that, because I think we were the first, maybe not the first live wrestling show, but the first independent wrestling show he'd ever been to. And obviously he's out and going to other promotions and other companies. And because, like say, we are a non-profit, we always have wanted to keep our tickets as low as possible. Barrow is a working class town. There's a lot of people who are on benefits, who are on very low incomes, have health issues, single parents, there's lots of things like that go on in Barrow. And obviously we love Barrow. Most of us, especially the, sort of the core guys who started there, all grew up in Barrow, and a lot of us still live in Barrow now. And it is very important to us. That community is important. That's why we love that we get to work with people like TNT Records, who are doing incredible things in Barrow and winning, national awards for their work and that sort of thing. So it is very important to us. And like say, when we first started running shows 10 years ago, our tickets were £5, and we've only ever put them up because of increasing costs and those sorts of things. And we never want somebody to have to miss a show because they can't afford it. Do we think our shows are worth more than £7? Absolutely. Double, maybe more than
it's worth hundreds of pounds. You know that. That was on the record saying thousands of pounds even.
Exactly. So, but we want to make sure that it's accessible for as many people as possible. The people can come, they can get a drink, they can get a t-shirt or, a wristband or a 8x10 or whatever it might be, and have fun and get away from things and just enjoy professional wrestling. And the anecdote or sort of the story I've always said is that when we're done, if there's one kid who sat with his mates in a pub and they're all wrestling fans and they're talking about it, and one of them says, "Oh, when I was a kid, the first wrestling show I ever went to was called KOW, and there was this guy called Nightmare, or there was this guy called Lucas Neon, or Craig Collins, or whoever it might be, and that's what made me fall in love with professional wrestling, made me a lifelong fan." That's all I want. That's it. Like, that would make me happy. And in terms of getting to 10 years, it's crazy to think about. Obviously, we lost time because of the pandemic, and I think it makes me appreciate it more now, that it is back, because it was taken away for so long. I mean, I can probably go and get it, actually, but I literally have a picture of everyone. I might go and get it, actually. Give me 1 second.
Take your time. Listen, this is what we do here, and this is why we're live here on Sportswire Radio, because this is what you get. I mean, think about this here. What ALP is going to bring us. I mean, this is pretty much, you ain't going to get this anywhere else. You think Vince McMahon and Tony Khan's going to do that for us? No way.
So this is So this is a picture of everyone who was involved at the 5th anniversary show. So there might be some familiar faces. I'm down there, but this was taken before the show. So this is everyone that was involved. You know, you can see Ethan. Oh, pointing the wrong way, but yeah, Ethan Edwards is down there. You can see Nightmare. You know,
I see Nightmare.
Scott Scowerman, Rick's there in the blue.
Yep.
But, you know, this is literally like everyone that was involved in the 5th anniversary show. Like I say, we don't usually do like this sort of a picture, but because it was the 5th anniversary show, we basically said, I was like, I want to get a picture for sort of prosperity, so that we've got that. I've got this hanging up like on my wall in my bedroom where I am now. I've got a framed version of it that sits on my office in work. So, you know, it means a massive deal to me and then everyone that's involved. You know, getting to 5 years was crazy because obviously I've told the story of how we started before and the fact we're sort of, you know, at its core a bunch of friends, and it's grown and become more of a family. And, you know, we've had people come in who've gone off and done bigger and better things, and we've still got new people who are coming in the company now. So yeah, 10 years, it's crazy to think about. I know that, you know, myself and now Commissioner Steele, now that he's involved, everyone wants this to be the biggest year in KOW history. That is the plan, the build to the 5th anniversary show. When I was still general manager, it was very much a case where I was like, the 5th anniversary show is going to be the best show we've ever done. And with the same with the 10th anniversary show. And the groundwork is being laid now. You know, it started at TakeOver, it started at Resurrection, that, you know, we're now on that journey. And you know, every show that we've had, I've mentioned, you know, just at the start of the show, I'm like, we are on the road to the 10th anniversary show. This show is part of that journey. You know, this is on us on our way to celebrating 10 years. And you know, that's an insane number. A lot of promotions don't make it that far, don't make it, you know, I think don't make it out of the first couple of years or a handful of years. So the fact we've been able to be
ECW didn't last as long as you guys. I mean, listen, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that had millions of dollars that didn't last 10 years, and yet you guys are here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Daly made a similar point on a recent, actually just a plug. The most recent episode of Pods Unknown is a deathmatch episode, which was like, I love death matches, and I basically nagged them for ages to do it. So that's finally out. So if you want to hear me and the lads talk about death matches, definitely check that out. But yeah, that was an analogy. I think Josh or Daly made that analogy.
Yeah, he did.
As well. That, you know, ECW didn't last that long. There's probably other promotions. Lucha Underground didn't last that long. You know, like say, lots of much bigger companies than ourselves. So it's really awesome. You know, we've been lucky enough to work with some incredibly talented people. Like say, have gone off and done bigger and better things. Obviously, Chris Ridgway is going to Japan in the next couple of days again to wrestle for Pro Wrestling Noah. Chris Brooks and Drew Parker are both in Japan at the moment. Obviously, we worked with Pete Dunne once. He's obviously now on SmackDown. And, you know,
new name,
new name, admittedly, but you know, Sam Gradwell, who's wrestling for NXT UK. You know, we've worked with a lot of really cool people. We've still got, you know, say of that heart, and that's the main thing, is we want our shows to be fun for everyone involved. You know, for me, for the wrestlers, for the fans, for everyone. And as soon as it stops being that, as soon as it stops being fun, as soon as it stops being about just that genuine love of pro wrestling and bringing stories and characters to Barrow, that's when it'll stop. You know, we have no intentions of stopping anytime soon. But, you know, if it ever gets to that point, you know, then maybe it will. But like I say, I know none of us have any intention of doing so. And there is the, you know, sort of amongst the KOW family, there is the joke about that, when we do the final show and all the silly ideas we throw around, like, we'll do a show where everyone switches characters for the night and I'll do a match because it's the last show, and all the silly ideas that get thrown out there. Mother Sue will be tag team champion with Will Carter, you know, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's crazy. It really is. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really, really good show. Obviously, plans are already being made for the 10th anniversary show, even with it being in November. Hopefully it will live up to being the best show we've ever done. Certainly, I think with the stories that are, you know, going to be happening with the wrestlers we've got involved, some new, some old, I think it's going to be really good. And then obviously, you know, on to the 15th anniversary show potentially.
Absolutely. Have a comment in here from Pat Squid Scuteri. We know him very well, obviously, drummer extraordinaire. from a local band, a couple of different local bands here on Staten Island. So here locally, so he's tuned in. I'm not quite sure what he knows about British wrestling, but we appreciate that he's definitely tuned in there. So I really thank him for his support and checking everything out here. I want to ask you a question about KOW before we get to closing thoughts here. And obviously, we spoke a number of different wrestlers here. We spoke about a number of different matches here. I'm pretty sure we've run down the entire card, but give me a wrestler or two that may or may not be there at Cloud9 in the Lounge on May the 14th that we should keep an eye on.
I think, obviously, we've announced that Dynamite Lee Dawson is going to be on the show.
Yes.
At the moment, he doesn't have a match announced. I did actually speak to Commissioner Steele today, and my understanding is he's currently working on his match, so there is going to be another match to be announced in due course. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I'd definitely say Dynamite Lee is a good person to keep an eye on. He just recently won the Future Shock Adrenaline Championship, which is a huge deal, and obviously was a really nice moment for him. So that was great to see, and I think he's got big potential and could well end up becoming a fixture in KOW moving forwards. As well, Lance Rivera, I know he really impressed, and I think
the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera, we know him very, very well.
Indeed, I've seen him with his setup for the streams, looking very suave. But yeah, I think he really impressed at Takeover. And my understanding is he's not on the next show because basically there's just a scheduling conflict, which obviously does happen. But my understanding is that he's
wrestling for the Wrestle Island Championship, May the 29th.
So definitely say keep an eye on him.
Yep, May the 29th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is. Yeah,
for the Wrestle Island World Championship, and he has been, I guess you'd say, quite a polarizing figure, to say the least, in Odyssey Pro Wrestling. So something tells me here that the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera, we have not heard the last from him by a long shot. And of course, we'll be back here tomorrow night. We're officially now going to make the announcement. It was supposed to be, we thought around 7 o'clock, but we're going to do it 9 o'clock with Brian Adison. So we're looking forward to speaking with Brian. You can follow Brian as well on Twitter at Brian Adison1. Also Instagram without the one. So looking forward to speaking with him. So I'm very, very excited. He's going to have a lot to say about you. In fact, he already messaged me, ALP, that he's looking forward to hearing what you had to say about him. So certainly I have a very, very good feeling that he's going to be in a mood, and I don't know what the mood's going to be in, but we'll certainly find out here tomorrow night. So as we're wrapping up, he'll be starting up with us tomorrow. So a very, very simple way. We'll also have, I believe, the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera is coming back here later this week. So we've had him on a couple of different times. For whatever reason, ALP, he definitely likes coming on here with us. So we'll certainly find out here. Before we get closing thoughts, I want to get a couple other thoughts on you. And Lucy's just blown up. I mean, you almost have to take credit. Do you get royalties for Lucy and all the success that she's having? Certainly everywhere. I mean, certainly you got to take a lot of credit for that. But give me a thought on some of the work you see now with Lucy, because I even see now she's got a Facebook page now for her journalist work.
Yeah, you know, I'm really proud of Lucy. I wouldn't say I take credit for it. I'm not the kind of person who likes to do that. But yeah, I mean, obviously she started out with us, of course. But I'm really happy to see that she got the opportunity, that she got at Odyssey Pro Wrestling, and obviously she's doing great work for them. I always, you know, read her show report, and you know, whenever I see a video with her going up, I mean, the wrestlers a lot of the time don't treat her very well, unfortunately, which is unfortunate. Obviously, she's a lovely lass, but yeah, you know, she's doing really well. She's doing a fantastic job. I'm hoping that more opportunities within the world of wrestling may well open up for her in the future. Obviously, very happy to have her on board, and yeah, she's doing really, really well. Like I say, absolutely wouldn't take credit for her success. It's her hard work that's got her there. At the end of the day, all I did was say, yeah, go on then. That was basically, you know, the extent of my involvement. So, you know, it's up to her. Like I say, I always say that, you know, all we are is a platform for people. That's it. And either people come on the platform and do a bad job and don't come back, which I can't really say has ever happened, or they do a good job and put the work in and they get rewarded for it, and that's all it is at the end of the day. She you know, took the chance, asked if, you know, we'd be interested in working with her. You know, we said we would be, and she's done a great job ever since. You know, her write-ups are phenomenal. She gets them done really quickly. She's got some really insightful points of view.
Yeah, she had the write-up for Odyssey. It was not even 24 hours to turn around. It was like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, she's really insightful. She comes up with points and ideas that I haven't even thought of, about matches and where things are going and stuff. So she's a really interesting person in terms of that side of things as well. So yeah, really happy that she's doing so well. Obviously, she's going to be, hopefully around for a long time to come, and hopefully, like say, she's just going to expand and maybe get to work with more companies or expand the role. Obviously, she started doing a little bit of the interviewing with us. Obviously, she did that interview with Brian Ince and she tried to catch the underclass of the last show. So she started branching out into that a little bit for us as well. And yeah, hopefully she just continues to go from strength to strength.
Listen, I'm just happy to know her at this point because I always tell her she's going to be the next Renee Paquette. She's going to be the next Sarah Schreiber. She's going to be all those big people and some and she knows her stuff, and that's what certainly gives her the advantage. And I wanted to ask you this question because I don't think I ever got a chance to ask it to you, and I want to do it before we get closing thoughts from you. What did the 2-Bit and Chris Ridgway matches mean to you on a personal level? Because you know them better than anybody, and I know for you, it had to mean something a little more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, like the first match, I cried at the end. Not a massive amount, but I did. A tear was shed because it was an emotional moment. Obviously, Chris and Chris basically brought Ed up in the business. He helped train Ed early on. Sorry, 2-Bit, I should say.
We'll forgive you. We'll forgive you.
Gonna get in trouble for that. But yeah, so Chris obviously helped 2-Bit out. Since 2-Bit's moved to Manchester, he's continued. He sort of rebuilt that relationship of sort of mentoring him. As well as the fact 2-Bit obviously in Barrow and in Markham and in most places is a despised person. And the cool thing about that first match was it started out with him being disliked, and as the match went on, the crowd eventually turned, and by the end of the match they were completely behind him and wanted him to win. Obviously, Mother Sue was there, Jennifer was there, so it was emotional because of them being there as well. So it was like a little extension of the KOW family was there to see it as well because we knew how important it was. Yeah, and that first match was phenomenal. Like I'd say it was, I can't remember if it was early this year or not, but it's the best match I've seen live in a very long time. It was great, and then the Iron Man match they just had recently was amazing as well. They were both amazing for different reasons. The Iron Man match told such a great story. In the ring, it made so much sense with 2-Bit being more of the underdog and Chris Ridgway being more experienced. It had a surprise in that 2-Bit ended up going up, and in the end it was Ridgway down the home stretch who was trying to get back on top and get that fall back. But honestly, both of them were incredible. If you can catch them, I definitely recommend catch them. Did a on there without realizing. I'd definitely recommend. I believe all the Catch Pro Wrestling shows are on Powered 4 TV, so those matches will be on there. So I'd definitely recommend checking them out. They're both really good. And of course, after the Iron Man match, 2-Bit got offered a place in Northwest Strong as well, which is obviously sort of Chris's group of people that he works with and that he's helped to mentor and bring up. So yeah, both matches were really emotional. Both phenomenal matches by themselves, but obviously with that added emotional investment, it just brought them up even better. Like I say, two of the best matches I've seen live. To me, the Iron Man match was one of the best free matches I saw on WrestleMania weekend, including, WWE and Ring of Honor and all the other stuff I managed to catch that weekend. So phenomenal stuff. Obviously, as I mentioned, Chris is going back to Japan to wrestle for Noah. 2-Bit's obviously continuing to, wrestle all over the place in the Northwest and wrestling for Catch and Future Shock and BWR and the Kingdom of Wrestling and OPW and all these other places. So he just seems to be on the upswing
He's
as well.
Everywhere. 2-Bit, it's like he's everywhere. Remember I first spoke with him and it was like he was like still kind of like this evolving individual. Now he's like a superstar. If I didn't know him, I don't think I'd be able to get a chance to speak to him now. I was fortunate over a year ago to get connected with him because if I would have been reaching out to him now, I don't think I would have had that opportunity. I got to be completely honest.
Yeah, 100%. And I think those matches with Chris have done a lot for him as well in terms of, bringing him up in people's eyes, in the fans' eyes, in terms of taking him seriously and realizing what it is he has to offer in terms of British wrestling on a larger scale. And a lot of the time it is like that for people. At first they sort of maybe only wrestling one or two places, and some people that's sort of their whole wrestling career, and then other people they blow up. I think obviously moving to Manchester has been big for him. I think getting to train with the likes of Chris and Sam Bailey and those sorts of people and wrestling new opponents and getting new, sources of sort of wrestling education has really helped. And yeah, I think he's going to keep on growing and growing. And I see a lot of two-bit in Chris. I think there's a lot of similarities there in terms of their journey so far, and hopefully he's going to continue on the same trajectory that Chris has. But yeah, definitely recommend checking those matches out 100%. And if you're in the Manchester area, definitely go down to a Catch Pro Wrestling show. They've got some great talent on the shows. Future Shock as well. There's a lot. I mean, I'm near Manchester now, so it's kind of Barrow, Morecambe, the Kingdom of Wrestling, and then stuff going on in Manchester is the main sort of stuff that I see, obviously, nowadays. But yeah, if you're in the Manchester area, there's a lot of great wrestling. Catch is definitely worth checking out. Future Shock have been running for years, and they're a great promotion as well. So yeah, definitely have a look. And, anyone that's involved with KOW, definitely, support them even if you're not local to Barrow, if you're near Morecambe, if you're in Manchester, like say a lot of these people are from around that area. Dynamite Lee wrestles in this area. Obviously, Lance Rivera does, Big Guns Joe. So even if you can't get to Barrow, and we've talked about somebody you like the sound of, odds are they might be on a show near you. So definitely keep an eye out and go and support them if you can.
And these are reasons why you also, before we get closing thoughts, want to follow KOW, KO_ wrestling, Twitter, Instagram, K_O_ wrestling, Knockout W on Facebook, ALP streams at Facebook, Twitter, because KOW is certainly where family-friendly action is where it's at. And of course, £7 only. TNT Records, Salt House Post. Can't go any better than that. This is why KOW is our favorite company. And before we get closing thoughts here from you, I'm going to ask you this last question. Is there anything that you want to say to anybody that's coming out to Cloud9 in the Lounge, or anybody that's hearing this, is going to hear the clips, is going to hear Brian tomorrow, or anybody else, Andre Decker even before the 14th, that's on the fence, that is thinking about coming? So anything you want to say to those people?
Yeah, I'd just say that I think for a long time we've sort of been one of British Wrestling's sort of best kept secrets. A lot of our fans are local. We don't really have many people traveling through. But if you are thinking about coming, I can promise it'll be a great night of action. It's great value for money. You're going to get, it looks like 6 matches, 3 title matches, some of the best talent in the Northwest, and some homegrown talent as well. If you've thought about coming before and you've not been sure, the last show was absolutely packed. If you are thinking of coming, I'd urge you to try and buy your tickets before the day. As Tom said, you can get them from TNT Records or Salt House Post Office if you're in Barrow, or there is a PayPal link which you can find on all our socials. If you're not able to buy tickets via those means, then do just get in touch with us, drop us a message or a DM, and we can sort something out for you. But yeah, in terms of family-friendly wrestling, in terms of great stories and great characters with some great in-ring action, I think we're a really good representation of that in the Northwest. It's really authentic. It's from the heart, and it's based on our love for professional wrestling. And when people have come, generally speaking, we always seem to get good feedback. People do seem to love it and really enjoy it. And it's only been recently that sort of through avenues like this and Pods Unknown and other bits and pieces that sort of our name has got out beyond Barrow and beyond that sort of bubble that Barrow is. So yeah, if you are seeing this and you're from Barrow, you've never been before, I'd definitely recommend coming. Josh from the Pods Unknown talked about how he'd sort of had this preconception about, it's going to be very, sort of panto-y and that sort of thing. But in reality, we like to think we're not like that. We want to be family friendly, but we want to have good stories and good action for people. So you can come if you're 6 and you'll have a great time, and you can come if you're 60 and you'll have a great time, and that's what we're aiming for, is wrestling that anyone can enjoy and that anyone is welcome to. So yeah, definitely do think about it, but I would say get your tickets as soon as possible. Like I say, we were really struggling to fit people in at the last show, and if we keep going as we are going this year, it might be a chance that we end up selling out ahead of time, or we have to turn people away, and then we have had to do that once or twice in the past. So definitely, if you are on the fence and you're not sure, I'd encourage you to get your tickets early and come on down. If you're traveling in, the train station is literally 5 minutes walk from the venue. There's plenty of hotels around, places you can get food. I know there are a couple of people from Manchester who've sort of made a weekend of it and visited Barrow and the Lakes and stuff as well. So if it is something that you're considering, obviously I'm biased, but I definitely recommend coming along and having a ticket, and hopefully you'll have a great time.
Absolutely. And this is, again, reasons why you need to go out there and find a way to get to Cloud9 in the lounge, because we're about 26 days away, ladies and gentlemen. So that means that if there's only a few tickets left, you really only have, well, could be after our interview with Brian tomorrow with Brian Anderson. So that's why you want to make sure that you go out there and support those who support us like KOW. And again, very, very excited about the upcoming event here for Redemption. So I got a feeling I'm going to be speaking a lot about it here in the next couple of weeks. Very, very happy always to talk KOW. And for you, my friend, I know you're a busy man, so I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to plug that we have it, anything else you want to get off your chest, please share it with us. And, I can't thank you enough for all that you do for us. And hopefully we'll get you on right after the 14th and not have to wait as long as we did for between the last appearance and this appearance. So I want to give you the floor. Plug anything you want to share about KOW. And I can't thank you enough, and fire away.
Yeah, so obviously we've talked about the show quite a lot. So obviously, like Tom said, you've had all the information. So follow us on the socials, and you can get a ticket and come on down. A big shout out to the guys from Pods Unknown. Obviously, they're local lads, and we're friends with them. They're doing really great work doing the podcasts. We are working with them. We're hoping that we're going to have maybe a couple of exclusive matches, maybe some interviews from them. So definitely, like I said, do check them out and show them some support as well. Like Tom said, you can find me at ALP Streams on Twitter. I have an ALP Streams Facebook page, and I'm ALP Streams on Twitch. I actually hadn't streamed in a long time, but I did yesterday, and I'm looking to maybe get back in the swing of it a little bit. I was playing some Outer Wilds Echoes of the IDLC, trying to get that completed. So if you're interested in that, you can follow that, and hopefully it'll become more regular. I think it had been 3 months since I'd last streamed, so hopefully I'll be doing it a little bit more regularly than that. But yeah, thanks to everybody for listening. Like I say, don't just support KOW. If you can, obviously great, but support local wrestling. If you're not in the UK, if you're in the US, wherever you might be, there will be local wrestling to you somewhere nearby. Obviously, if you are in the UK and you can go along to a show that one of our wrestlers competes on, that's great. But yeah, just support local wrestling, support your local promotion. There's lots of great wrestling out there, lots of great talent out there. And like I say, just support local wrestling if you are a fan. If you've never been before, if you only watch the big boys and AEW and WWE and that sort of thing, they're obviously great, but you can't beat the intimate atmosphere and the care and love that gets put into independent wrestling. So definitely give it a look. And yeah, thanks to everybody for listening. And I hope, like I say, I'll be back on again soon and we can chat more about wrestling.
I got a feeling we will definitely be doing that, and I got a very good feeling we'll be speaking about a lot of KOW. We'll be speaking a lot more with the heart and soul of KOW, that is Mr. ALP, who has literally done it all here when it comes to KOW and much, much more. And we'll be back here tomorrow night here on all of our platforms, all of our channels with Brian Adelson. We'll speak about the development here with his match with Shawnee. We'll speak about his career. Also, his match we'll look back on with the natural born fighter, RP Davis. So we'll be speaking much more KOW. Maybe we'll even work in a KOW thought or two at the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera, though he's hard to speak with right now because right now he's locked in a huge dispute right now with commentator Simon Hill out there. So I don't know what kind of mood he's going to be in, but we'll certainly see what all that is as well. And for you, my friend, I can't thank you enough. Congratulations on all the success. I'm looking forward to the 14th. I'm looking forward to Redemption. I'm looking forward to continuing to promote it here on Sportswire Radio over the next few weeks. And looking forward to having you back here, my friend. And thank you for all you do. And thank you for giving us an appearance from Oakley. Always good to see Oakley here on the streams with us. And we'll definitely speak with you next time, my friend.
Yep. Talk to you later, bud.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show with the heart and soul of KOW. As I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, and stay tuned here for more hard-hitting analysis here on Sportswire Radio, as we now have a brand new piece of business show with Jeremy and Glenn as they get us ready for NXT and much, much more. So that is airing now on sportnam.com/play. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and also the Northeast Streaming Sports channel, I thank you for tuning in. We'll be back here tomorrow night right about 9 p.m. British Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time with Brian Adelson. We'll speak about his big matchup coming here at KOW's Redemption on May the 14th against Shawnee. And again, for more information on getting to Cloud9 in the Lounge, you can go to TNT Records Barrow without the W on Twitter. You can go to the Salt House Post Office for just £7. Buy a ticket there. Also, Knockout W Facebook, KO_wrestling Twitter, K_O_wrestling Instagram, ALP streams on Twitter and Facebook. Very easy. All you have to do is go to those places. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Good night, and we'll be back here tomorrow night on Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station.